Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question before you move on. When was the last time a woman leaned toward you, not because you said something clever, not because you looked a certain way, not because you bought something or offered something or performed something, but simply because of the energy you were carrying? Simply because of who you were in that moment. If you can't remember, I want you to know something. It is not because that moment has passed for you. It is not because age has taken it away. It is not because the years have moved against you. It is because no one ever told you what women actually respond to in a man who has lived. No one sat you down and said, here is what changes after 60. Here is what becomes available to you that was never available before. Here is the thing that is right there in your hands that most men walk right past every single day, completely unaware of the power they are wasting. Today, that changes, because what we're about to explore together is real. It is grounded in psychology and biology and the deep truth of human connection, and it is going to shift something in the way you see yourself and the way others see you permanently. Here is where we begin. Female psychology at its core has always been oriented toward one thing above everything else: safety. Not safety in a small, fearful sense, safety in a deep, primal, whole-body sense. The kind of safety that allows a woman to fully relax into herself. The kind of safety that lets her stop scanning the horizon for threat and actually arrive in the present moment. The kind of safety that frees something in her nervous system that most women spend their entire lives holding tightly because they have never found a person or a place or a presence that made it feel truly okay to let go. And here is the thing about men over 60 that is almost never spoken aloud, but is felt deeply and instantly by women everywhere. You have something that younger men simply do not have yet. You have the kind of presence that only comes from having actually lived, from having gone through the fire and come out the other side, from having lost things and grieved them and carried on, from having made mistakes and sat with the consequences and grown into something more honest. That is not a consolation prize. That is the most attractive thing a human being can be. But, and this is where most men over 60 go completely off course, having lived through all of that doesn't mean anything if you haven't also done the inner work of integrating If you are carrying your history as weight rather than as wisdom, if you are still performing the same defenses, the same postures, the same emotional unavailabilities you learned to survive with decades ago, if you are living in your head and your habits rather than actually fully present in your own life, because women don't respond to history, they respond to presence, and presence is something you can only offer when you've stopped running from yourself. So let's talk about what this actually looks like. Let's get specific, because vague inspiration doesn't change anything. Real understanding does. The first thing that makes a man over 60 genuinely irresistible, and this will surprise you because it is so much simpler than anything anyone has ever tried to sell you, is the ability to be completely unhurriedly, uncomplicatedly still, not passive, not checked out. Not the kind of stillness that is just emotional withdrawal wearing a calm mask, but genuine stillness, the stillness of a man who is not scrambling to prove anything, who is not anxious about how he is being perceived, who has no performance running in the background, no inner voice whispering that he needs to be funnier or more impressive or more interesting than he currently is. A man who has, through the years, arrived at a place where he is simply himself, and that is enough. Women feel this immediately. They feel it in the first few minutes of being in someone's company. There is a quality of nervous energy in men who haven't yet settled into themselves, an invisible striving, an almost imperceptible need to land somewhere, to be received well, to earn their place in the room, and women's nervous systems, which are extraordinarily sensitive to social cues, pick up on this instantly. But when a man has genuinely arrived in himself, when there is no agenda running, no proving to do, no gap between who he is and who he's pretending to be, the whole atmosphere around him changes. Women lean in, they relax, they become more open, more talkative, more themselves, not because he has done anything flashy or impressive, but because his groundedness gives them permission to ground too. This is the first wasted gift: stillness, real, earned, integrated stillness. And you likely have more access to it than you realize. You have simply been taught to mistake activity for vitality, to equate striving with value, to keep moving as proof that you still matter. But the truth is the opposite. The man who has nothing left to prove is magnetic in a way that a younger man, still accumulating proof, simply cannot be. Now let's talk about the second thing, because it builds on the first and it goes even deeper. Women over a certain age, and this is particularly true of women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, are done with men who are afraid of depth. They are done with conversations that stay permanently on the surface, that skip over anything real, that deflect with humor the moment something honest threatens to come up. They have sat through enough of those conversations. They have been patient enough, accommodating enough, small enough for long enough. What they are genuinely hungry for, what they will tell you if you ask them in a quiet and honest moment, is a man who can go asterisk there asterisk, who can talk about what has mattered to him, who can name a loss and let it have weight rather than rushing past it, who can say something real about what he regrets, what he has learned, what he still wonders about when the house is quiet, who can be curious about her inner world, not as a strategy, not to get somewhere, but because he is genuinely interested in what it has been like to be her. This capacity for depth, this emotional courage, is extraordinarily rare in men of any age. But men over 60 have something that makes it more accessible to them if they choose to reach for it: time. And what time brings when it is allowed to do its work is perspective. The things that seemed urgently important at 35 look different at 65. The ego defenses that felt necessary at 40 start to feel like unnecessary weight by 60. Life has a way of softening a person who is willing to be softened. And that softening, that genuine hard-won emotional openness, is one of the most profoundly attractive qualities a human being can possess. But here is where most men waste it. They have been softened by life. They have felt the full range of human experience. They have become more real and more layered and more genuinely interesting than they were at any earlier point in their lives. And then they hide it. They put the old performance back on. They keep the conversation safe. They stay behind the wall because the wall was built long ago and it is simply habit now, this walling. And women can see it. They can see the depth right there behind the wall. And it is almost unbearably frustrating to watch someone be so much more than they are, letting themselves be. So the invitation is this: let the wall come down. Not all at once, not in some dramatic confession that overwhelms rather than connects, but gently, steadily, genuinely. Let yourself be a little more real in conversations than feels completely comfortable. Let a meaningful question get a meaningful answer. Let curiosity be an actual thing you feel, rather than a performance you put on. Because when a woman experiences a man who is both deeply grounded and genuinely open, who has the stillness of someone who knows himself and the vulnerability of someone who is still alive to the world, something happens in her that she will not be able to fully explain. She finds herself wanting to be near him, not in a desperate way, not in a way she cannot understand or has to manage, but in the way that all living things move toward what nourishes them. Naturally, inevitably, without needing a reason. Let's talk about the body now, because this conversation would be incomplete without it, and because there is so much confusion and unnecessary pain around this particular subject. A man's body over 60 has changed. This is simply true. The physiology of desire, arousal, and sexual response shifts significantly in midlife and beyond. Things that once happened quickly now take time. Energy that once felt inexhaustible now requires care. The urgent intensity that characterized sexuality in younger years gives way to something that is actually, when it is understood and embraced rather than feared and mourned, far more powerful. Because here is what female psychology tells us about what women actually want in intimate connection, especially as they themselves mature. They do not want urgency. They do not want performance. They do not want to feel like a finish line. What they want is exactly what changes in a man's body after 60, a slower, more attentive, more present engagement with the whole of the experience. More time spent in closeness, more genuine curiosity about what feels good to her rather than a predetermined map being followed. More of the entire body being seen and touched rather than a narrow focus on destination. What looks like loss from the outside, the natural slowing that happens in a man's sexual physiology with age, is actually, in the context of female psychology, one of the most significant gifts. Because the man who has learned to go slowly, who is not racing toward conclusion, who is fully present in the touching and the breathing and the closeness itself, that man gives a woman something she has often never experienced before. He gives her the experience of mattering in every moment of the encounter, not just at the end of it. This is not consolation, this is the truth. Women over and over again describe the most satisfying intimate experiences of their lives as ones that involve the most presence, the most patience, the most genuine attention, and the least performance. And those qualities, by the grace of biology and the wisdom of years, become more naturally available to a man as he ages, not less. But only if he stops measuring himself against who he was at 35. Only if he stops treating aging as defeat and starts treating it as evolution. Only if he lets what he has now, real, embodied, hard-won, be more than enough. Because it is. It genuinely, completely is. There is another piece of this that is deeply connected to female psychology and is almost never spoken about in the context of older men, and it is this: the way you treat yourself directly determines how women feel in your presence. This is not about appearance. This is not about wearing the right clothes or having the right haircut or maintaining some external standard of attractiveness. This is something more fundamental. It is about whether you carry yourself as someone who matters. Whether you care for your body with genuine respect, not to perform vitality, but because your body has carried you through an extraordinary life and deserves to be honored. Whether you speak about yourself with basic dignity rather than self-deprecation designed to get ahead of the criticism you fear. Whether you have interests that light you up, a sense of purpose that gets you out of bed, things you care about that have nothing to do with how you are perceived. Women are deeply attuned to how a man relates to himself. If there is a current of shame running beneath the surface, shame about aging, about the body, about the things that have changed, they feel it. Not because they are looking for it, but because human beings are wired to read each other, and what is held internally radiates outward whether we intend it to or not. But when a man has arrived at a genuine peace with himself, not a performed peace, not a front of confidence that is actually defensiveness in a suit, but a real, quiet, rooted sense of being okay with exactly who and what and where he is, that radiates too, and it is extraordinarily compelling. This peace is not something you perform your way into. It is something you arrive at by actually doing the work, by being honest with yourself about what you are still carrying, by addressing the grief that hasn't been grieved, the anger that hasn't been examined, the loneliness that has been masked by busyness or bravado, by choosing deliberately and daily to live in your actual life rather than in the story of what your life was supposed to look like. Men who do this work, who commit to their own genuine growth and self-honesty, even and especially in later life, become something that is genuinely rare in the world. They become safe. Not safe in a boring sense, not safe in a diminished sense, safe in the way a very tall, very deep, very old tree is safe. There is something you can rest against, something that will not blow over, something that has roots. And women, at every age but especially as they themselves mature, are drawn to that kind of safety the way everything draws toward what it needs most. So what does all of this ask of you practically and honestly? It asks you to stop waiting to feel differently before you start living differently. It asks you to bring your genuine self into conversations rather than the version you think will be better received. It asks you to go slowly in intimacy, not because you have to, but because you've finally understood that slow is where everything real lives. It asks you to speak honestly about what has mattered to you, what you have learned, what still excites you and moves you and keeps you curious. It asks you to take care of your body as an act of genuine self-respect, rather than as a project of damage control. It asks you to let the things that have softened you actually be seen, rather than armoring back up out of habit. It asks you to be, fully and unapologetically, the man that all of those years have been making you into. Because that man, that real, grounded, present, honest, alive man, is not someone women can resist. Not because he has performed the right things, or said the magic words, or cracked the code of female psychology, but because he has cracked something far more fundamental than that. He has cracked himself open. And in doing so, he has become someone that every other human being, not just women, but anyone with a heart open enough to recognize it, is drawn toward like a compass finds north. You are not too old. You have not missed the window. You are not less than you were. You are, if you are willing to see it, more fully yourself than you have ever been. And that self lived in, worn in, real and whole and here is the most magnetic thing in the entire room. Stop wasting it. It is extraordinary. And the world and the women in it are waiting for you to actually show up in it.